So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us. My name is Nicole. I'm an environmental programs assistant for the city of Cupertino, and I'll be the host for today's webinar. And I'm joined today by the city of Cupertino environmental programs manager, Ursula Sarova, who will be talking to you all today about garbage and recycling services, possible rate increases, and to learn about new state legislation to keep organic materials out of the garbage. And so before we get started, we have a few housekeeping items to go over. So the webinar, it will be recorded and we'll be posting it on our YouTube channel to view afterwards. We'll also be doing a live Q&A at the very end. So if you do have questions, please use the Q&A box. And alternatively, if you are calling in and don't have access to the chat box, you can submit questions to our email, environmental@cupertino.org. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. And Ursula, I hand it off to you.
All right, thanks, Nicole. And thank you for those who took time out of your day to join us. We really do appreciate that civic involvement. And so basically I have a PowerPoint presentation I'm going to run through about 20 minutes. And then, like we said, we'll go to answer questions if folks have them. So I'm going to share my PowerPoint. So our images will probably disappear. You'll just see the PowerPoint and then we'll pop back on at the end. And Nicole will let us know if there are any issues along the way. So thanks again. We will get this rolling. Alrighty, so this is, as Nicole said, just an update because we are working on this new agreement. We wanted to reach out to residents and give you a chance to hear about what's going on and offer feedback. So this presentation is geared toward residents, so this probably looks familiar to folks. Or if you're a multifamily resident, maybe this is more what you're used to. And actually, just so that we know who's here today, we wanted to run a little poll just to see, what kind of home folks are living in. I know there are only a handful of you, but Nicole's going to run a little poll for us so we can see who's out there today. All right, 2 people, 3 people. All right. So it looks like we mostly entirely have single-family home dwelling people today, which is more or less what I expected. We're majority single-family homes. And so I think I can stop sharing these. Okay. So thanks for taking our little poll. We'll speak to both single family and multifamily, but just briefly on both. So Recology, they've been our hauler for a long time. The current agreement has been in place since 2010. It's been extended a couple times, and it's going to expire at the end of January 2021. So that's why we're working on this new agreement. Why are we just negotiating with Recology? Well, the current agreement has provisions in it that if certain conditions were met, then we could have the option to do this new negotiation just with them, and they met those conditions, and council gave us that authorization to do that negotiation with Recology back in April at a council meeting. The new hauling agreement, we're planning to bring it to council in the winter. Like I said, it expires in January. If things were to go sideways in some way, we really don't anticipate that, but we do have an 18-month bridge agreement in place just to ensure that garbage will continue to be collected, as we straighten out anything that needs straightening out, or if we have to go out to a wider bid again. And of course, we're always keeping rates and services in consideration relative to comparable cities around us. So what I want to do is just kind of review current services for residents. These, familiar bins. We have the 3 streams here in Cupertino: garbage, recycling, and organics collection. We're just going to run through those really quickly. I snagged this from Recology's service guide. This is the recycling. We have in Cupertino what is called single stream recycling, and that is the paper and containers are all going together into the one bin. We do ask that you keep those containers empty and dry so that the paper can stay dry and clean and is more marketable. And after recycling is collected, it is taken to green waste in San Jose for processing and marketing. So you jumble it all together in your bin. We have to get that all sorted back out again into, all the plastics, all the glass, all the papers together so that they can be marketed. And as I like to say, recycling isn't just a good idea, it's the law. There are state laws that require certain amounts of diversion from the garbage. So that's just one of many reasons we have recycling service. Now your green, or maybe you have a brown, a tan bin, that's where we want all the yard trimmings, food scraps, and food soiled paper. And we've been trying to get the word out on the food scraps and food soiled paper. Some people know, some people don't, but here we just wanted to remind folks again that you can put all these different things in your organics so that they can be made into compost. And after they are collected, they are taken to South Valley Organics. There's a very lovely aerial view of South Valley Organics, which is owned by Recology. And there they use this open windrow system and make your yard trimmings and food scraps into compost, which is returned to the residents seasonally at our compost site for giveaway. And the garbage is, everything that wasn't covered in the earlier slides. A lot of that can be diapers, wrappers, textiles, plastic utensils and straws, expanded foamed plastic, pet waste and litter. All that needs to go in the garbage. And after it's collected, the garbage is taken directly to Newbie Island Landfill in the Milpitas area. And there's no further processing, just goes directly to landfill and is placed there at Newbie. All right, extra services. So besides your 3 carts, this should look familiar, hopefully. You do have the option to put out used cooking oil, used motor oil, compact fluorescent bulbs, and batteries. And those are all things that we don't want to go into the garbage. And Recology handles those curbside. If you place those out, in the Ziploc bags or the tightly closed non-breakable bottles for the oil, Recology will collect those at the curb. And you may also, from time to time, have need of getting rid of some extra bulky items or extra materials. You get 2 on-call pickups a year included in your rates. That's bulky items, e-waste, scrap metal. You just make those appointments with Recology. For e-waste, some folks may remember we used to have an arrangement with an Apple location on Bub Road that was a handy drop-off place, but that situation dissolved a couple years ago, and so, but we do have the option still of having Recology pick up e-waste. And some of the local stores, some of the big box stores like Best Buy and Staples will also take some items back. So if you have things you're trying to get rid of, we're always happy to try and help you find options for that. Other services that Recology provides, like we talked about the compost site already, where residents can go to get compost usually from late March through October. And we've also normally had environmental days. Those have been suspended during COVID, mostly because we haven't been able to use the normal site that we use because of COVID. So it's had a bit of a hiccup this year, as so many things have, but that's a popular service that offers document shredding, e-waste, C&D, construction and demolition, donatable item drop-off. So that's a popular service. Residents in single family homes and multifamily homes, if they're interested, can request a pail or a pitcher for collecting food scraps in your kitchen before you put them out in your cart or bin, whatever you have at your location. So those are available for those who don't have them already. And of course, Christmas tree pickup in January. Recology does that extra tree pickup during the month of January. Got to make sure those are 5 feet or less. So for most people, that could mean, you know, making sure you cut your tree in half before you put it out there. And if you are in a multifamily, you want to work with your property manager to identify the place where the trees are going to be put for service. And I can't let any discussion of services go without talking about household hazardous waste, even though this isn't a service that we offer directly. I always want to remind folks that household hazardous waste can't go in the garbage. That's stuff like thinners, solvents, pesticides, fertilizer, paints, medicine. We got to keep all of that out of the garbage. You may remember that we used to have a door-to-door collection, and that program dissolved in January 2018. Nothing that we could have done to avoid it, and you know, it was a nice service that we enjoyed having, so we were sad that that couldn't continue, but we were lucky in that we already had a relationship with the Santa Clara County HHW drop-off program, which is a very well-run program where you can make an appointment and drop all these household hazardous waste items off. And if you find that you have specific things like medicines and sharps, there's a good organization called Med Project, and they have a lot of drop-off locations for those items. And paint, you can find drop-off locations at paintcare.org. Often that is the hardware stores or paint stores that can help you divert those materials. So I just wanted to remind folks that that option is out there. So as we consider this new 10-year agreement with Recology, we really wanted to find out what services are valuable to people, what's the satisfaction like now with Recology, and discuss rates a bit, just so that we're trying to keep people informed about what things we need to consider and what things are on the horizon. So we really wanted to let people have the opportunity to have input. In early September, we, let's see, let me go back one. I did want to mention, we launched a formal survey in early September, and that was done through Godby Research, which has done our community-wide surveys in the past. So they do a statistically significant polling. So they're using voter registration data, and they're calling and trying to get representation from all different groups across the city to make a very significant and significant sample of residents. And they needed 400 responses to have that confidence level. And Cupertino folks really showed up. We got 700 responses, so we feel quite good about the robustness of that survey. But if you weren't one of the lucky 700, we also decided to make the questions available online. So we have this cupertino.org/newfa site, and that FA is for franchise agreement. We have that site, and on that webpage are links to these surveys. We actually have them in both English and Chinese. And if you feel like you just can't deal with the online version and you really would like a paper version, you can write to us and we'll make that available to you. So what have we learned so far? Preliminary results from the survey showed folks are pretty satisfied with Recology. That matches what we've seen in the community-wide surveys over the past few years. And again, the surveys are still available. I think we're going to keep them open through mid-October, so go ahead and hop on there if you want to add your voice to this. We asked about the extra services. None of these were really surprising to us. On-call collections and those batteries and bulbs curbside were all very popular. Environmental days. The coat collection, had a lower value, rating, I guess, but there were a lot of people who said they didn't know too. So we're thinking maybe we just need to get the word out more about that, and that might be the issue there. We also asked about possible future services. Now, with this new agreement, we are not looking for anything new, significantly new or fancy, really. And we got that direction from council back in April as well. You know, we like the services we have now. There's really nothing on the horizon that we need to ramp up, you know, to add new routes or anything. So we just asked about a few sort of smaller things. One is the extra cardboard collection, especially now that we've been at home and shelter in place. You know, a lot of folks have been more aware of this, what we call the Amazon effect, you know, where we're just, a lot of us have a lot of extra cardboard from deliveries at home, you know, and just to make sure there are good options for folks to get rid of that cardboard if it's not going to all fit in your recycling cart. You know, since we are asking folks to put the organics and food scraps into the organics cart, we thought that having the option to have your cart professionally washed once a year might be something that would be appealing to folks. There was a question, actually came from a council member, about having access to a smaller sized garbage cart. And so we asked about that. There was some interest in that. And then we also asked about sending the garbage to be processed. And what I mean by that is, you know, currently our garbage in Cupertino is, like I said, taken directly to Newbie Island Landfill. But there is the option out there to process garbage. And what that would do is pull out, basically rescue materials that were thrown away that could be recycled. And that could be organics, that could be containers, cans. You know, they have really elaborate sorting now that can rescue a lot of materials out of the garbage. So we're asking that because our current landfill agreement with Newbie ends in a couple years. It ends at the end of 2023. So we need to start thinking about this and look at the other options available to us. So we were just curious if people were interested in that idea of processing the garbage. So what other things do we need to consider as we work on these negotiations? The big one is new state organics legislation is on the way. So it's really targeting this, getting the food and food soiled paper out of the garbage and routed to compost. So we are lucky in Cupertino that we have already rolled out service to all residents. So single family homes and multifamily homes should have access to a green cart, and they are, you know, you're encouraged to put your food scraps and food soiled paper into that green cart. You know, as this law is coming down, there are some cities and jurisdictions that don't have that service available yet. So it's going to be a heavier lift for them, but we're happy to say we're already in pretty good shape for that. There was a law from a few years ago called AB 1826 that required businesses to have access to that organic service. And we, of course, complied with that. And we also made it available to multifamily residents, which was not required by the state law, but, you know, we thought it was a good idea to make that available to everybody. But this new legislation, so even though we have this service, the new legislation requires more of us. And I did also want to say that this new legislation is really a climate change related legislation. So it was identifying ways to reduce these short-lived climate pollutants, namely methane. And when we end up with these organics in the landfill, we get the methane. And so this was really a way for California to target that issue. So, like I said, it's called SB 1383, short-lived climate pollutants regulations, goes into effect January 2022. The goal is that statewide organics in the garbage will be reduced by 75%. And that's comparing to a 2014 waste characterization that they did statewide. For businesses, for generators of large amounts of food, and this would be like large grocery stores, large restaurants, these kind of folks that are producing a lot of edible food, there's now going to be a requirement that those organizations rescue that food or get that food to food rescue organizations so that it can be routed to folks who need food. So no more throwing away edible food. And the thing I always think about with this is I was part of a waste assessment one day over in Sunnyvale, and there was a bin that was brought in from a large tech campus, and when they dumped it out for us to look at, there was literally a mountain of perfectly good looking bagels. So, that's the kind of thing that happens that we just really need to clamp down on, because that's just, ridiculous from a food security standpoint and from a materials standpoint and methane standpoint. So everybody's going to be encouraged, from businesses on down to residents, to get their food scraps and food sold paper into the organics bin. Now, does it stop at just encouraging? Not really. We are going to be required to audit. We're going to be required to let people know that we see they're not doing the right thing. In 2024, the state actually requires enforcing. So we're going to have to be issuing penalties. And the city and Recology are going to share this, these activities to make sure that these regulations are being complied with in Cupertino. So I talked about this a little bit already, but why do we need 1383? And again, it is to address, these methane getting generated in the landfill and food insecurity. So that's really what CalRecycle is targeting with that. And you can see that they've shown that over half of what's ending up in the garbage is potentially compostable. So you really just compostable or edible. So we really need to target those materials. Okay, so why 1383 in Cupertino? Well, so we did a waste characterization study at single-family homes in 2018. So we actually have this data, and we can see really clearly. This is the single-family data, and you can see 52% of what was in the garbage really could have been composted. So there's a lot of room, and this is by weight for folks out there who are thinking about that. This is by weight. 52% of what was found in the garbage really could have been routed over to that green or brown cart. And what about multifamily? Very similar, 51%. The recycle and organic cart looks a little different, but the garbage, 51% is compostable, and businesses too. So our commercial folks that were checked, it's 48% of the garbage was compostable. So we're just really seeing this trend even locally here in Cupertino. So let's talk rate changes. While we're not considering adding any new fancy services, rates are going to be influenced by the services that we do negotiate, the cost to comply with that 1383 set of regulations, which, like I hinted at, it involves, auditing, noticing, reporting, encouraging, enabling, helping, signage. There's a lot of footwork to customers to really try and make this a successful effort for everybody and meet those requirements. Another thing is, most of you are probably familiar with the China National Sword set of policies that really kind of upset the recycling markets internationally. And that has really caused a revenue drop for recyclables. So that's part of this equation. And, increased labor and operating costs have happened, so that's going to be factored in as well. So these are all things that could influence rates. We are expecting an increase, and we're just going to negotiate to keep it as low as possible while meeting all of our requirements. This is just to show where we're at now with rates in Cupertino. This is sorted by the 32-gallon cart. And what I wanted to say about this is that every year in our current agreement, there's a CPI increase built in. So that just kind of keeps rates up with that consumer price index. So we showed this in the orange bar here, that in November, the CPI increase will happen. It's 3.05%. So the new rate starting November 1st for the 32-gallon cart will be $30.50 per month. So you can see how our rates compare with our neighboring jurisdictions. Campbell is usually the one that's considered closest to us on here. Mountain View and Sunnyvale route their garbage to the material recovery facility, like I talked about before. So, their rates are a little bit higher to accommodate that. So it's just interesting to give you a little overview of where we're at with comparison to other cities. So next steps and questions, like I said, the surveys are still available online. We're thinking we'll leave those up through October 15th. And you can always email our team. Environmental@cupertino.org reaches the whole team. We're happy to answer any questions you have, today or going forward. Negotiations continue, and we're hoping to bring that final agreement to the City Council in winter. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I do want to point out this is my my favorite picture of the jack-o'-lantern in the green bin. So just had to stick that in there. It's a reminder to put our food scraps in the bin, and also it's almost getting to be Halloween time. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let Nicole tell us if there are any questions in the Q&A. Hey.
Thank you, Ursula.
It's weird to speak to a screen by myself, so I'm back. Oh, we've added a couple people since I was.
Yes, we don't have any questions yet, but for folks tuning in, if you do have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and put them in the Q&A box now.
What I can say is that we do have a study session with City Council next Tuesday. And since it's a study session, it will be right at the beginning. It's at 5:30, and it's actually at 5:30 as opposed to being in the agenda where you have to wait until you get to your item. So that's exciting. So we'll be presenting some of the same information to council and just giving them an update on where we're at. Some of the services we're thinking about, this feedback from the residents and businesses. Tomorrow we have another Zoom meeting like this, but it's targeted to businesses. So if you operate a business in Cupertino and want a little more business focused info, it's going to be a lot of the same stuff, just with a little more focus on business needs and business concerns. And our goal is really to just be here and to be available for questions, so that we're trying to have transparency about this process to the extent that we can during negotiations. And just to let you know, we are trying to consider the values and valued services of the community as we go through this process.
Still no questions.
All right. I was going to stare awkwardly at the people, but I can just look at your little list.
But I went ahead and just added our website again in our chat box, cupertino.org/newfa. As Ursula mentioned, with the City Council study session, there's details on our webpage with how to attend and participate if you're interested.
Well, I mean, I guess we won't keep you guys longer, but if you do think of something you want to ask, of course, feel free to email us. Again, it's environmental@cupertino.org, and we'll be sure to get you answers. And if you think about anything, along this whole process, we're always happy to answer questions.
We did get one question in. Someone said, I missed the beginning of the presentation. The green organics cart will be given to us, or does it have to be requested?
Are we talking about the little food scraps container to help you in the kitchen, or a cart that you would already hopefully have available to you? I don't know if we can.
For the individual that typed that question, would you like to clarify? Either in the Q&A box or the chat. And the individual said we don't have either. So maybe addressing both the cart and the pail.
Okay. Well, in that case, I would say email us your information. Email us your question, and we can look up your address and try to figure out what's going on there. If you're in a single family home, you should have access to a cart. So yeah, just please reach out to us and we'll figure it out for you.
And another question. I put our email address in the chat box for the individual asking. Another question, considering all the increases in cost, how much would the aggregate be on the monthly bill?
Well, that's what we're still negotiating. So we don't really have any good numbers to put out there yet. So we'll talk a little bit more about it at the council session, but since it's all still, on the table as it is, I hesitate to put any numbers out there.
Alrighty. Any last questions? Okay. Well, we can go ahead and end it here. As mentioned, if you think of any questions, please email environmental@cupertino.org, and we're always available.
All right. Well, thank you again, everybody. I really appreciate everyone showing up and, and giving us your time and your ear. And we look forward to continuing, to hear from folks who want to reach out, and encourage everyone to take the surveys if you would like to. All right. Hope everyone has a lovely rest of the day.